Hi, Parmeshwaran. Thank you so much for joining in early. I know, uh, I get a feeling, Arushi, whenever a webinar is going to be great, is when I start the webinar 10 minutes early and I have people pouring in. By the time we hit the 10-minute mark, I am fairly confident we're going to cross a 150 mark. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and for everybody else, thank you so much for showing your interest in the very early days. For us, it was very important to get that kind of attention and respect that we got from you guys because we're trying something different today. We're doing something very different, something we've never done in the past. It's a bit of a gamble. It's a bit of an experiment. And with all the love that you guys have shown us, we feel that we're in the right direction. So thank you so much once again.
Absolutely. And this is more of a discussion. We would love it if you guys could participate, ask questions, shoot out queries. That's the way to go.
Absolutely. And while we're waiting for everybody else to join, why don't you just quickly go in the chat section and write a little bit about yourself, your name, which company do you work for, what do you do at that company, so that you can network with everybody else who's also here.
Wow. Can we have more introductions? Thank you, Kushbu, for starting the honors. Chirag, what's interesting about today's session is that we are going to have people who are even non-designers, people from different perspectives, PMs, tech guys, designers, business folks, marketeers. So I'm very excited to see how each one of us have our different perception about how to design experiences.
More than designing experiences, I believe what got people attracted to this is the fact that consumer psychology is such a gray area in everyone's life. When you talk about consumer psychology, you think about consumer decision making. And when you think about decision making, you're talking business. I mean, looking at business, everybody wants business, right? And nobody knows how a human's brains work.
Mhm.
So, which also got me interested in this topic in the first place, right? What makes somebody click?
Yeah, you'll have to wait a few
So
minutes.
that's the million-dollar question. Marketers are struggling with it. Product guys are struggling with it. CRO guys are struggling with it. Sales guys are struggling with it. I mean, everybody under the sun is pretty much struggling with how do I get somebody to click?
Mhm.
Because we're talking about consumer psychology, this really hits the nail with a lot of people. And I am already seeing our attendee list growing and growing and growing with every minute. We'll wait for 3 more minutes, and I'm pretty sure we'll be able to cross 100 attendees by then. We're already at 75. We'll wait for 3 more minutes. This one particular topic is super close to my heart, and which is why I made sure that everybody from my previous world
Mm.
got to join me on this. There were a lot of requests when I was working in my previous organization. They want to know about consumer psychology and stuff like that. And we were discussing about topics, and that's the first thing that came to my mind, right? So thank you so much, people, for joining in. I'm really passionate. I'm super excited. Let me know if you guys are excited. If you have your notepads and pens handy, we're going to make a lot of notes today. A lot of topics will be covered. A lot of eye openers will be shared. I want to see that excitement. Just keep yourselves active in the chat. That's the only way where I can see if you're there or no. Obviously, I can't see your cams. I can't see your smiling faces, which I really love, but say your hellos in the chat. I'd love to see everyone. I see a couple of folks from Easy Diner coming in. Uh, I being
Wow.
very proud Easy Diner customer. I'm super happy and excited to see you guys here. Um, I see Vanshika. I see Khushbu. I see a bunch of others. Yes, super.
Hi, Vanshika.
Let's. All right. So all the people who've joined us, right? One quick disclaimer before we get started. Today, it might so happen that there may be an overload of information. Because I promised I'll cover 30 concepts. I am prepared with 90 plus. Okay. I handpicked 30, the ones I feel you're going to enjoy the most. Which means 30 concepts in 60 minutes, 2 minutes per concept might become an information overload. So I hope you've had a hearty dinner. I hope you're free from distractions. Please keep your phones aside. Please keep your pens and papers handy. We'll make a lot of notes. And a humble request to everybody, whatever you learned today, just make a very kind attempt of summarizing all of that learning into a small LinkedIn post. Do tag me and Arushi in your LinkedIn posts. The fun part is we will choose two people at random
Mm-hmm.
and we will give them $100 Amazon voucher for putting
Mm-hmm.
out a LinkedIn post. So this is the only time you'll make money just by existing on LinkedIn. All right. So let's get
And learning.
and learning, of course, and learning. So without any further ado, let's get started. We've already crossed 100 attendees. We've already crossed our 10 p.m. mark. Let's get started. Let's get started. Super excited. Um, a quick introduction about the speakers today. Some of you already know me, some of you don't. I head all things marketing here at Hurix Digital. Um, but I have somebody with me who spent more than a decade and a half marinating herself in design, in user experience, in tech, in a lot of consumer experience side of the universe. What you called as front end is what she has an expertise in. I'd like to introduce Arushi Sethi. She's also joined Urix as the AVP of User Experience. Very sharp, very brilliant. Almost all of my conversations with her, I've always taken away a bunch of things that I find new and interesting in her conversations. Hopefully, this will resonate in what we do today as well. Now, the way this entire 60 minutes is structured is we'll have a lot of concept discussions. We'll have a lot of polls just to make sure that you're awake. You're not going to sleep because it's slightly later in the day. Just to make sure that you're awake, you've learned a couple of things. I will flash a couple of polls. Now, these may have options with differentiating opinion. There's no right or wrong. But what I essentially want to know is what is your perception of the things that we're going to talk about? So, with that said, I quickly want to get started with the first icebreaker. Okay, the first question. Let's switch. Sagar, can you quickly pop in the poll? Now, you guys will see a poll on the screen. Quickly go ahead and start voting. Is UI and UX the same thing? Anybody who's a non-UX professional, I have seen 80% of them feel that, okay, UI and UX, we use them very loosely, interchangeably, it's all the same. I'm sorry if I offend a couple of people, and Arshi, I will really
Designers, take
apologize.
note. Huh? Let's
I
catch
will,
Chirag after this session.
yes, I'm going to give you a parcel and a basket of apology. But there was a time when I personally believed UI, UX, graphic designing, everything is the same thing because I had no clue what that universe was all about. Okay, so quickly start punching in your answers. Sagar, can we pull up the results if we have the polls in? I am super glad to know that people feel UI and UX are completely different. Thank you so much. That sets the tone for rest of the evening today. I am super excited. Over to you, Arshi. Unleash your wisdom upon us. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your super kind words, Chirag. So, all attendees, we are very honored that you've made your time and you've separated few hours to learn with us, chat with us, and discuss all things UX. So, without further ado, I'm going to dig in. And just a disclaimer, I'm slightly under the weather. So, if you hear me cough and sneeze, please pardon me. So, when it comes to designing experiences, it leads us to a fundamental question. Who exactly owns the experience? Is it the marketeer who's selling the experience? Is it the designer who's crafting the experience? Or is it the product owners who are sanctioning the experience from a business perspective? One thing to note is that we live in the experience economy. An average person on a daily basis uses 35 apps. And having said that, the memory and attention span of a typical user is 8 seconds. Even a goldfish has a 1 second higher attention span. That leads us to the fact and the fundamental truth that users should find what they're looking for exactly when they land onto an interface. So those who are designers out here, it's bread and butter for us. That's the language we speak. But however, for the others who are non-designers, I'd like to reiterate the fact that there is something called above the fold, which means the most critical part or the hero of the entire experience or why the user is here on the interface. They need to find it as soon as they land, because we are playing with a very sleek window, which is 8 seconds.
So,
Having
sorry, Arushi, sorry to cut you. You mentioned that those 8 seconds, right? Interestingly, there was a report conducted by McKinsey in 2022.
Mhm.
That report said that an average human attention span is decreasing by 30% year on year. And the amount of money that brands are pouring in just to get you to stop scrolling and click on those ads is humongous. They actually made a very bold claim that said that in the most important and the most expensive part of a human body is the thumb, where all brands combined are spending anywhere between 2.7 to $3 million on you individually just to stop you to scroll and click on their ads, right? Uh,
Mhm.
so just thought, I mean, it's fascinating, right? Human attention span from 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 6 seconds. Where is this headed? And how do we stop people and get them to click and get them to do something that we want them to do? Over to you.
Absolutely, Chirag. Case in point, right? Let's unpack this topic further. So,
Bhumika says should be 1 second by now. Fair enough, Bhumika. We're not that damaged as of now. Okay. I have hope in humanity. Given
Mhm.
that artificial intelligence is taking over, I still have hope in humanity. We're still in that era where we have at least 3 seconds that we can spend behind brands.
Mhm.
Sorry,
Ab-
continue.
Absolutely, right? So, designing experiences is like telling a good story. There's some amount of artistry, there's science, and there's also magic that goes into it. It's like watching good cinema. It's like eating your favorite meal, or it's like doing things that make your heart race, right? There is product storytelling that comes into play, and that is what makes people remember products for a longer, right? So there's a plot, there's a character who is the hero, there's decor. What is the setting or what is the environment that the product provides the user? What is the melody or the rhythm of actions and habits that forms while using the product? And most critically, what is the dialogue? How is it that the product experience is speaking to its users? And how is it that in situations, good or bad or ugly, how is it that the product is going to comfort the users in a given theme or a setting? Right? So for designers and non-designers, when somebody asks you, right, so can you design an app? The gut feeling is like, sure, I can do it. I've been doing this for years and this is my game, this is my jam. But however, it is very important to understand that human beings are bizarre creatures. Every individual has their own way of looking at the world, perceiving, all experiences that they partake in. Now, it also leads us to a very critical question, right? That even though we may harp about human-centered design and we may design our products specifically for users, use cases, business metrics, and so on and so forth, all the mumbo jumbo out there. But the way every unique individual is going to perceive your design is unique to their reality and how they relate to the world. So, a designer or a product team may craft out a path or a user journey, but users have their mind of their own. Naturally, they're smarter than the experience itself because they have to use it. Having said that, there is user experience and there is unobserved design, right? So in terms of, not every user will take the same path or the same journey. Now, while designing the product or the experience, how do we cater to different kinds of human beings, and how do we make sure that they all get what they are coming here for? The human brain is judgmental. Okay, as soon as the 8 second window when a user lands onto a product, they are going to dissect every single thing that they see on the screen. Now, they may be, experiencing the product through a page, but they are going to, dissect it to a subatomic level. So they're going to look at the templates, they're going to look at, the fields, they're going to look at the colors, spacing, and all of these like design acumen things. But having said that, people will not remember how much discount you gave them, or people will not remember, how easily they could use any other app, but they're going to remember how they felt while using your product. And that is where user experience steps in. One thing to note is that human beings are not reading, even though designs are well crafted, well meaning, and well intended, where we are trying to build in and bake in some amount of transparency into, full disclosure and letting people know everything that they need to know while using an experience. There are people who are bypassing the content, they are only visually scanning it. So until 2016, Nielsen and Normal Group did a study where they found that F shape, Z shape, and K clear pattern are the most common, ways humans scan interfaces while reading it. But having said that, in the recent advent of AI and how hyper simple and hyper frictionless experiences have become, there are also people who are bypassing, who are only visual creatures, who are more focused on images as opposed to reading the text, and so on and so forth. Now, having said that, that 8-second window needs to cater to all these people who have a different reading style so that they make sense of the experience that they are a part of. For a product to have a positive experience, it's very easy to say that, oh, it should be of value and it should be better than any other experience. Having said that, there are more layers to this entire journey. So, for example, a user needs to find the product useful, desirable, credible, and also findable. We may design a product by placing tons of features, tons of functionality, everything laid out in a clear, crisp format. But there has to be some magic and some amount of self-discovery that a user needs to go through while experiencing a product. And they should also, at the same time, walk a tightrope by things being findable. So if I'm looking on an app for a particular feature or a functionality, if I cannot find it, doesn't matter how amazing the UI is or how amazing the animations are or, the sound effects are, it's going to be a miss. Now, having said that, user experience is not about beautifying things. It's about helping humans relate to a digital world in a more realistic way. But UX, while we are custodians of, user needs and, we are also champions of business outcome. There's something called the sweet spot of innovation. So for a product to be viable for a business, it needs to be viable, it needs to be feasible, and it needs to be desirable. Otherwise, a product's not going to pay for itself. It's going to incur losses for a business. And also, as amazingly it may be designed, it may not land well with the users because it doesn't have the trifecta of what it takes to make a successful product. Right? Now, having said that, the digital world has been around for more than 20 years. Some of us were probably born into the digital world, very comfortable. Like I remember early childhood days when so comfortable using MSN and Orkut and all these ways of connecting digitally. Chirag, you and I are same age, right? I'm sure like you also went through that phase
I
of
remember how we used to write scraps on everybody's Orkut walls. I used to, wow, that's bringing back a lot of memories.
Absolutely. And that is an example of a blended experience. Remember how we passed chits in classrooms, talking to each other? That is what Orkut did. It made the scrap public. It made that chit public. Why? To bake in some amount of social proof. So users and consumers are not going to separate their physical and their digital world. It's in some average of the entire experience of living life and using products digitally is what matters to people, right? So they're not going to look at, oh, how does this font look? Or, oh, how do these colors look? They are going to look at, okay, using this product, does it solve my problem? Does it integrate into my life effortlessly? If I have to go into a product and learn too much about it, read a user manual, I'm sorry, the experience has failed. It's not made intuitive enough for people to use it and adopt it naturally. There's also something called systems thinking, right? So every single part of the interface, whether it's the UI, whether it's the messaging, the functionality, the user journey, the broader mental model. So, for example, India and US have different driving sides, right? Right hand versus left hand. So, if you're going to give a car that does not align with the mental model, doesn't matter how, even if you're the Michael Schumacher of driving, you're not going to enjoy driving that car, which is why experiences are localized, even though they may have a global appeal and a global look and feel, they need to be localized to their audience and be endemic so that people of that cultural nuance can actually grasp it. And then comes the most critical part, perception, right? So I'm going to let Chirag talk about it because he's the marketeer here.
So perception plays a very big game, right? There is a defined value to things and then there is a perceived value to things. Why is it that people run after gamification? Why is it that people run after creating memorable experiences? It's all because at the end of the day, what you remember in your head is that great experience that you had. And one negative experience, you're going to talk to 10 people about it. One positive experience, you're not going to share it with everyone. But why is that fight of creating that positive experience so important? Because that's how you perceive a brand. If let's say a brand talks very generic stuff with me, right? They talk to me about the general traits that a persona like me would have. I immediately feel and I immediately perceive that the brand understands me. And then I will absorb everything that they say after that. No matter how distant it is from the ground reality, I'll just accept it. Okay. And if any of you follow me on LinkedIn, I put out a post about a couple of weeks back. And it's my go-to way of winning over people. I'll just go and randomly ask somebody, hey, you're looking a little tensed. Is everything okay with you? Even if you're smiling, there is something that is wrong with everyone, right? Something that's troubling everyone. You just see people melt right in front of, and then you won them over, and then everything that you say, it's going to be golden. So perception does play a very big role.
Chirag is a true-blooded marketeer, self-promotion in the UX ocean. Okay.
Yes. No amount of AI is going to be selling me. So with that said, Arushi spoke about a lot of things. And just to make sure that you guys are attentive, not sleeping, I want to quickly run a poll. When you're looking at user experience as a whole, there is one side of the universe which is more customer centric, the other side of the universe which is more business objective specific, right? I want conversions, I want numbers. What is it that you should prioritize in user experience? Sagar, can you quickly pull up the poll?
Proof is always in the pudding, my dear.
Which of the following is the most important factor in UX design? Is it the aesthetic appeal of how the platform looks? Is it user experience, user satisfaction? Which means that even if the UI is really bad, but as long as the user is satisfied, my business is done. Is it business objective? Should I keep selling you something every time? That constant CTA that you see on the screen has to be by now? Or is just the kind of tech that you're using? Just give people a flavor of AI and everything. Even if you're searching for a product, there's AI coming in. You're chatting with something, AI is coming in. What is it that you would want to prioritize in UX design? What is your number one priority? Sagar, if you have enough responses coming in, can you just quickly flash the results? User satisfaction, some people say business goals. Now, understand there's no right or wrong here. Okay. For some businesses, yes, generating revenue is the core, because at the end of the day, why am I building a great product? It's for business, right? Nobody is running an NGO. Nobody is doing, leaving happy thoughts in the universe. But the correct answer here is actually user satisfaction. User satisfaction leads to customer stickiness, which leads to customer retention, which leads to more money, right? So great. Thank you so much. With that said, I hope I've given your throat a little bit of relaxing time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's dig in, team. So it comes to the heart of this conversation, psychology behind human decision making. So while we may all think that we're exceptionally smart, super driven, and have this world of experiences, we may think that we're rational thinkers and everything is logical in our life. It's like a layered approach to living life, making one decision at the time that's to our best interest. Having said that, 90% decision making is subconscious. It ties into our attitudes, our beliefs, our instincts. How are we wired to view the world? Having said that, there are two brains in our very large brain, which is also shrinking, just like the attention span every year. We have a system one thinking, which is more gut based, more instinct. And there is system two, which is rational, which is, slow effort, logical reasoning. 95% of our decision making is emotional. You may think that you have decided that you're going to invest in that mutual fund or that Roth IRA, IRA account, but the minute when you're making that transaction, it actually comes from your gut, it comes from your feelings, it comes from all the fables your family and friends have told you in your life, period. Now, having said that, an experience needs to be designed for both these systems. There's something called the peak end rule. It's a phenomenon where people are not going to remember a sum average of your entire experience. Users are going to pay very close attention to the most intense parts of the entire experience. So, for example, which is the peak, and also the end, right? So it comes to the primary use of the product and then how the product ends, right? So people will recall negative experiences more vividly. So let's say Chirag comes to my house for dinner. I've made this elaborate 5-course meal for him, but my bread is bad. So Chirag is gonna go home and talk to his wife and be like, oh, food was okay, but the bread was bad. And that is the fundamental way human beings operate. So while designing an experience, UX designers have figured out how do we maximize these value moments for the user so that the experience becomes more memorable for them. Why, why might they choose our product over any other product? Timing is of essence here, to understand how do we build these experiences. Human beings are creatures of habits. And sorry, I'm calling us creatures, but we are bizarre and we are irrational because most 95% of our thinking is emotional, right? And that is what is unique about us. That is what keeps us different. Otherwise, we would be a product of the same factory of the universe, right? Now, old habits die hard. So whether it's, New Year's resolutions of going to the gym and buying cult fit subscriptions that nobody goes to, or it's, quitting things like smoking, or, eating dinner before 8 p.m., like all the virtues of a successful human being, right? So a routine needs to be created while using these digital products. And all these routines are created by balancing cues, these subtle visual digital cues in the experience, and also rewarding users for their, actions, reciprocity, So you may see different products give you a sign-in bonus, like $10 discount as soon as you land in. Now, that is a short way of giving you something so that it could inspire user action. It could persuade you to shop more and transact more because now you have this value or this free gift, especially in India, right? So Indians love free stuff, period. Having said that, anybody in this planet, on this planet, loves free stuff. And that straight ties into the reward mechanics of a product, right? So if you look at what is it that inspires this emotion or, evokes action, right? So user behavior is shaped both by your internal environment. What are you feeling at that point of time? Are you using a product while you're traveling in the subway, or are you using the product in the comfort of your beautiful home? As well as external, environment, as well as internal environment. Like, what is it that you're feeling, your emotional state? Are you well? Are you unwell? Right? So there are impulses. Human beings are also very impulsive, right? So at any given point of time, while designing experiences, we need to be cognizant of all these different things, right? So what specific plan does the user have to use this app? Is this an experience which is set and forget, which means that they're going to buy a subscription once and they're going to move on in their life? Or is it something that they come daily to, like Netflix versus buying a Amazon subscription of vitamins, right? Also, what are the motives, right? Is it intrinsic? Is it something of value that, the user wants, versus what is it that the user needs? And while doing user research, while going through the, double diamond design process, we need to understand that human beings and users are never going to be articulate as to what they need. So if we are blindly believing as to what their needs are and how they're articulating their feedback, a designer typically needs to read between the lines as well, which means that they need to focus on what the needs are, what the wants are, and what the unmet needs are, something that users are not talking about. And that is what ticks in the market, right? So, inhibitions, impulses, right? So, what is it that drives hunger? What is it that emotes? And what is it that forms habits while using this product or this experience? And typically, what are the hardwired physiological responses and tendencies that can shape behavior? So somebody who's predisposed to, doing things a certain way, is it that the product or the interface is kind of nudging them towards that direction, or is it entirely challenging them to move out of their comfort zone? Please excuse me. There's a phenomenon called priming and perception, right? So imagine entering a bakery where the aroma of, freshly baked cookies or bread is tantalizing you. It's making you feel amazing. Now, that's a physical world experience. Having said that, now how do we make users emote digitally? Right. So some of the very cool examples that we see, some of the flag bearers are Duolingo. Before you even start your journey of learning a language on Duolingo, it's going to give you bite-sized, fun learning content so that it can really give you value enough to make a commitment to learn something long-term. There's also, if you see, most enterprise products and even D2C products today, right? So Canva, for example, right? It's going to allow you to experience the interface, experience the product before even buying a subscription. So that comes down to the freemium business model, right? So as I said before, the proof is in the pudding. People would love to try something out, feel confident enough, and then make a commitment to it. Right? So if we see Medium, for example, right? So once you read 5 articles on Medium, it's going to blur out a certain part of the article, right? So what it's trying to do is it's prompting the user to upgrade after the user has read enough, after they have made a commitment enough on the interface to read 5 articles. There's also Amazon, right? So Amazon is one of the most successful businesses in the world. Now, having said that, they have a very different approach for every geography, every nationality, and every culture. If you see Amazon India, right, it's full of abundance. The Indian culture values abundance, it values 100 items of a blue curtain that I'm looking for, versus a more Scandinavian, European approach of, okay, I'm looking for a blue curtain, these are 10 best picks. How is it that the users arrive at these 10 best picks? That comes with priming, right? So before you even subscribe something on Amazon, it highlights the key USP. So one recent trend that I've seen in the new age in experiences and products is that just before you check out or make that payment or even add your delivery address, people have started putting testimonials there, right? So in that moment where you're going to take action, going to commit to the product, How is it that the product can make your decision making, that emotional side of you, more comforted while making that decision?
So I'll just give you some more break. And interestingly, in the chat, somebody raised the question, this
Mhm.
blurring idea, is this a right practice? Does it make the user irritated, drop out? And we have a bunch of e-commerce folks here, right? Some of them define or tend to gravitate towards more minimalistic approaches in design. Some tend to use cluttered designs, and some simply just try to use dark patterns. I know of a couple of quick commerce brands that will suddenly add some product in your checkout, and you, without even noticing it, would just add spend some extra money in your cart. So having said that, Sagar, can you pull up the next poll? Now, because you're all product guys, marketing guys, design folks, right? Which of these is an example of a dark pattern in user experience? Having a clear and visible cancel subscription button, a checkout process that automatically adds extra items. For some reason, I feel like I gave out the answer. A very simple and easy to read privacy policy, and a search bar with autocomplete suggestions. All right, if you guys are awake, I want to see the answers coming in. I've already given you the correct answer. No brainer. If you're awake, just give in your poll.
Absolutely. So while you answer the poll, how's the energy? Can we have some reactions, please? To see
Oh,
how many of
energy is
us are
super
actually enjoying
exciting.
this session.
I don't know, Arushi, if you've seen the chat section, the energy is super exciting. People are just pouring
Yeah,
in with
going through it.
intense. It's absolutely lovely. Sagar, can I have the results for this poll?
Mhm. Checkout process that automatically adds extra items. Well done, team. That is the truth.
Can I quickly have a yes in the chat if you've been a victim of this without naming the brand? We all know who.
Survivor.
Just
Survivor.
quickly
of
add a yes in the chat.
Wow, that's a
We've
huge
all been
number of
there,
yes.
done
We've
that.
all fallen
I
prey
can
to
feel your pain.
this.
I can feel your pain. Uh,
I can read a big yes, wow.
all
Pradeep,
right. With
big
that said, all right. With that said, I'll quickly take a check on the timer. Arushi, over to you. Let's keep the ball rolling.
Thank you. All marketeers, please pay attention, right? In the experience economy, digital real estate, and I'm infamously calling out the marketeers because that's sponsored content, that is what makes business money. But there's a phenomenon called banner blindness, which means that whenever an interface or a product is recommending something, either in the form of an ad, subconsciously the user is going to switch off. How many of us have seen websites like this where you are bombarded with 10 different ads of different things based on all your search history that XYZ browsers have collected over time? There's a higher chance that these ads could be beneficial and actually lead to conversion if they are native ads, which means that how is it that we can embed these ads into the system, not by as placing them as placards, but actually designing smart ads, designing the user experience of these ads so that it becomes seamless while users are scrolling the interface. So yeah, having said that, random ads, they get dismissed. Sure, they could make business some revenue because advertising, but for the user, it doesn't do anything. How is it that products have been smart about capitalizing on this phenomenon? So Instagram, for example, right? Even sponsored ads, they make it look like user generated content. And after the GDPR Act was passed in 2017, it became mandatory to call out ads as sponsored ads or things like that. But however, when you're scrolling your Instagram late at night, you don't mind seeing ads. That is one of the primary ways in which people actually are discovering things.
It is said that your audience will blindly ignore you if you keep showcasing the same material over and over and over again across multiple platforms, be it your private communications, be it your website, your app. And if I see the same message over and over again, be it a promotional message or not, inevitably you're pushing your customers towards a stage called promotional fatigue. Obviously, like Arushi said, if it looks like a banner, obviously I'm ignoring it. I'm going into my ad blocker settings and trying to figure out how to block this. But
Mhm.
apart from that, also, if your general communication looks like an ad, you reach that stage of promotional fatigue.
Mhm. And especially in e-commerce products, right? So it's very easy for the system to have a lot of data around what are you searching, what is it that you're looking at, what your fitting size is, or what your preferences are. It can now utilize this data to actually smart suggest things. So, for example, if you look at jet.com or if you look at Mintra, right? So they have these styles of, ads, but they're listed within the listing pages or the product detail pages. So it's more natural for people to see this ad. How many of us have fallen also prey to customers also bought this? The number of times I have gone to an e-commerce website buying one thing but ended up buying five. Well, that's intentional.
So I will honestly and personally not comment on this because
Mhm.
there was an entire era in my life where I was just promoting people to put these recommendations across their websites and apps. So I'm just going to stay out of this conversation.
Mhm.
Everybody is smart enough to make their own deductions. All right.
Mm. It's a gray pattern. It's white also, it's dark also, you know. So it's up to us. How is it that we'll perceive this, you know? All right. Then comes the anchoring effect. There's a reason why pricing options, subscription options are designed in a certain way. The most popular or the most recommended medium priced option is always placed in the middle, and it's always accompanied by the cheaper option and the more expensive option. What does it do? It makes the middle one look more lucrative, best value that the user can derive. The user may actually simply need a basic pack, but having looked at all the information and all the persuasion that can be designed in a product, there's a higher chance that they are likely to be using more features by paying for the more expensive thing, right? So influence is what makes emotional decision making click. So, for example, the mid-tier option will always be popular. Why? Because this ties down to a human belief system, right? So humans like to stick in a crowd, in a mob, right? They like to be safe. And in today's world, especially given that from any nook and corner, anything can fly onto you, even in digital experiences, people exhibit this behavior, right? Where they try to stick together, take the middle path. Why? Because subconsciously it is perceived as something that is safe, that kind of protects the user from making the wrong decision. So while users are judging the interface, they are also judging themselves for making these decisions on these products. And it is our job as designers, as product owners, and as marketeers to kind of not just do the hygiene stuff where, we have a clean app that people can use, but guide them to better decisions, which are in their best interest. Then comes the power of framing, right? So Uber, for example, right? So we all may crib and cry about, oh my God, it's raining, our cabs are getting more expensive, there's more traffic, right? Uber gives this alert, fares are a lot higher due to increased demand. It is baking in some amount of transparency so that it's giving you full disclosure upfront that, look, I'm going to charge you $46 as opposed to, 20, which you would typically pay for your route to work. And that is how Uber frames the experience of why it's charging us more, right? So, for example, e-commerce websites have this before after prices, right? Slash pricing, right? So that it makes, human beings think that they're getting something for cheaper. Well, that may not be the real case. Now, these are design patterns that are abundantly available in the world, right? Not just e-commerce apps, but a lot of different apps are using the same design patterns, right? So, having said that, the idea is not to reinvent the wheel wherever necessary. It needs to align to users' mental models and the way they observe the world, the way they relate to it. But we need to kind of balance the familiar with the fresh, you know. We need to give the users the idea that they are in a safe environment, in a safe territory, but at the same time, there's novelty. There is something new. There is something that makes them feel better. For example, how information is worded is very critical to how a user is going to perceive the product. So, for example, 4% spam versus 96% spam free. It's a much safer bet for me to use a product if I feel that, okay, it's safeguarding me against spams. Just the way the numbers are playing, right? Just the way the copy is written. It's a fundamental rule that human beings like to be spoken to the way they speak. And UX copy is kind of the art or the craft or the artistry of cracking this particular human code and bringing it onto digital experiences.
Awesome. So for a lot of us, this was an information overload. And we're going to have this information overload going forward as well.
Mhm.
And that's the same problem you have with your customers as well. Now, this is something called as cognitive load. Sagar, can you just quickly pull up the question? What does a high cognitive load in UX usually mean? One, the interface has too many elements for users to process very easily. Second, the design encourages users to think very critically. Users find the interface highly engaging, or the UI has a lot of animations. Which of these is actually an example of a high cognitive load? Can I have the answers coming quickly? All right, I'll give you 3 more seconds. And Sagar, can you just show the answers? Yes, that's correct. So when you have too many elements on the screen, I'm just trying to identify and wrap my head around what do I do with this? What do I do with that? What do I do with that? And that's the case with most banking apps. If you see, there are so many options right on the screen. And for me, it becomes very difficult to process the entire user interface. So that's an example of a cognitive load. With that premise set, Arushi, over to you. Arushi, you're on mute.
One thing to take note is it's great to design an experience, but over designing it is a mode kill, it's a buzz kill, and it's going to make users bounce. While there is cognitive load, there are other types of load or friction that a user experiences while using a product. There's visual load. So if there are too many elements, too many interactions, too many, experiments going on a screen, it's going to overwhelm people. There's intellectual load. So if a user within the user journey, they need to remember things as to, oh, what is it that I did? Where am I going? Where I feel like I'm endlessly filling a form, but it's not really taking me anywhere. That's an example of an intellectual load. There's also memory load, which means that how is it that we can reduce the need for users to recall things manually? Human memory is faulty, which means that there's a short-term memory, there's a long-term memory. And while, stimuli and thoughts and processes are distilled through these different forms of memory, we are going to retain the information, but not in our active memory. Then comes the motor load. So, for example, while designing the product, if your target area is too far away from where you're actually reading the experience, you're going to miss the seducible moment, right? So it's all about timing. User is taking action, they have some kind of motivation. What is the visual cue that we can give them? And how is it that we can minimize all these four loads? And that is the formula or the recipe for creating an experience that sticks. So cognitive load and decision making, right? So by reducing unnecessary elements, that's a no-brainer, right? Why would anyone not do that? Now, in today's world, yes, it's a no-brainer. But 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when things first started, if you look at Yahoo versus Google, so it may be an instinct for a designer to over design, put a lot of elements, prove our worth and salt, right? Like we are designers, we're going to put a lot of things onto the screen, and we're going to give the users the choice in abundance, that they are in control of what they're looking at. But if you look at Google, minimalism, but used to its advantage. Now, minimalism is not going to work in every context, right? So while designing products and experiences, context is king, not content only, right? So how do you lower the cognitive load, and how do you enable quick decision making? Now, that decision making is by telling people why is it that they should use this, who is this best suited for. A lot of times, products like Apple, right? So they have this aspirational quality. Anybody in college, even, if they have an iPhone, they aspire to be, somebody who is a top tier tech user, as opposed to somebody, and this is a very controversial topic, right? So they're Android users, they're Apple users, they're OnePlus users, all of that, Ubuntu, many operating systems in this world, right? But what is one key factor? That they all reduce cognitive load while using the system. So, for example, if you look at super apps, right? Super apps work in certain contexts, in certain, cultures. But what is the biggest super app that we have seen in this world? It is actually the operating system of our mobile phone. It is one system that has 100 different apps, whether it's Android, whether it's Apple, but yet everything seamlessly sticks together and makes it easier for users to use. So, you know, there are other ways of reducing cognitive load. So, as I mentioned before, right? So, the user needs to know within the journey, especially if it's long. So, how many of us here have applied for home loans digitally? If we can have some answers in the chat from the audience. And how was your experience while doing that? Right. So, home loans as a product is a very cumbersome activity, right? So, you need to prove your identity, you need to prove, a lot of different documents and all of these things.
Arushi, very honest,
Yeah.
while applying for a loan online, it's not the process of applying, it's the
Mhm,
post application experience that is dreadful. The
mhm.
amount of spam calls you get every day. Suddenly your number is written on public billboards, everywhere, and everybody's just picking up the phone and calling you. Hey, you were looking for a loan, I have something for you. Hey, you're looking for a credit card. Hey, you're looking for this. And I simply have to switch off my phone. It is that dreadful of an experience.
Absolutely, right? So, coming to my point, it's not just the digital experience, it's an omni-channel experience. It's before making the decision, during, and after. That is what contributes to the entire experience. Now, Chirag, you mentioned spams, calls, people harrowing you. They are using the peak end rule, but to their disadvantage, unfortunately. And that is where you need UX designers to come in and kind of intervene, right? So, Vishal is saying never needed, don't want to apply for loans. Yes, it's like need to say yes to one of them. All right, cool.
So
So,
so for everybody who's wondering who is Vishal Moth, I know him very closely. He's a dear friend of mine,
mhm,
and he is one of those people who loves to chat. Okay,
mhm,
if,
mhm.
if there's something in his mind, it's there in the chat for everybody to hear. So feel free to ignore him, Arushi. I
No
know Vishal will
worries,
not get offended with this. We are very close
no
buddies.
worries.
Vishal,
No
I love you for this, but feel free to ignore him.
Guys, experiences are relative. Everybody is bizarre and unique, and their way of relating to it is different. And that is what makes this more interesting, right? Like, how is it that we can design experiences for people who don't talk the same language or who don't think the same way? That comes to chunking, right? So, for example, if you read long passages of text, it's very difficult for the human brain to scan these long passages, whether it's an F shape pattern or a Z shape or a cake layer pattern. It's much easier if things are bulleted, if things are formatted, right? And that brings us to like typography, that brings us to in designing the information within an experience. How quickly somebody can scan this and get to doing what they have to and move on with their life. Now, if you look at some existing design patterns in this world, right, that are so common and they're so engraved into the way we use digital products. So, for example, predictive search, right? So, whenever you're typing something on Google, it's going to give you keywords that makes it easier for you to kind of predict what you're looking at and maybe even refine your search in some cases, right? So, uh, right. And then comes a very critical, piece or power of scarcity, right? So it's one of the key pillars of, garnering influence in this world. So when something is very commonly available, people are not going to value it. That's a human brain, right? So that is how we perceive the world. For example, Amazon's limited time deal, right? So it nudges you subconsciously to buy a product sooner than waiting another day and buying it from some other app. Some may call it dark pattern, but again, I'd call it a gray pattern. Many times I've ended up with good products because of this. Right? And for example,
A very big impact of scarcity, right? And one very big e-commerce brand in India does this. And I keep giving this example over and over again. You have a limited time sale or a smartphone that goes on sale at 12 in the afternoon
mhm,
on a Tuesday morning. And within 5 seconds, it's out of stock.
mhm,
And the entire world is sitting there clicking on that buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now, add to cart, add to cart, add to cart button. That is the power of scarcity. Is it so that the brand is only creating 100 smartphones every week? Absolutely not, right?
no,
But this power of scarcity makes people take impulsive decisions. And that's I mean, you can call it gray, absolutely. But again,
it ties down into different psychological principles. So, for example, law of marginal returns. If something is so easily available and something you are continuously consuming and experiencing, you're not going to value it. At the same time, this creates this added layer of novelty to buying something, the experience of doing something. And it's tricky, right? How products are designed to kind of facilitate business, but many a times they're also designed to kind of bridge the gap between what the user needs and what the business needs to do. That is where UX experts come into play. So there are different principles, right? So loss aversion. Human beings are going to do anything to avoid pain more than they are going to do anything to gain pleasure. So scarcity, it drives consumers to purchase to avoid perceived losses. So for example, if we are going for a vacation, right, and the fear of not getting the best hotel last minute is going to make you book a more expensive hotel. Anticipated regret, right? So FOMO, right? All of us experience FOMO, whether it's during vacations, whether it's during festivals, and even on a daily basis, on weekends, right? Like, why is it that some of us are happy to travel 50 miles to watch a movie that everyone is talking about, but not watch the same movie online at home, right? And that ties down to social proof. Users are more likely going to believe and take a decision if it is backed by other people in the same life stage, in the same age group, or in the same experience of using the product. So, for example, Airbnb is doing it very smartly, right? So it's giving you this little badge where it's saying this is a rare find, Other people are not going to have it. You're the one, you've set your sight on it, and this is exclusive for you, even though the same product or the same booking is available to 50 other people, right? So this all ties down to framing, perception, and how is it that we can anchor the user to using a certain making a certain decision much faster. How many of us are guilty of thinking that, okay, if you like, suppose app A is doing something good, you borrow it. Is doing something good, you borrow it. App C is doing something good, you borrow it. And then you create an experience which is an amalgamation of all. but it's counterintuitive to how users experience happiness while experiencing a product, which means that there's something called the featureitis curve. Adding more features is not going to make it more intuitive, is not going to give interfaces the value or the users the value that they desire from a product. User happiness peaks at a certain level while they have the confidence of using certain features, but banking apps, case in point, right? So 500 different options in an app, you may be only using five. How often do you actually go to your banking app to chill, even though the most critical part of your life, your finances, are on that app? So it's all about balancing the familiar with the fresh and also progressively disclosing features, right? So, for example, a remote from our childhoods has 50 buttons versus an Apple remote has five buttons, which is easier to use, right? In some cases, people may be used to the mental model of clicking buttons and moving things around, but hyper simplicity works in certain cases. When the user has less decisions to make on an interface, that is when it will be more successful for that user while using that product. Right? So, choice overload, right? So, uh, ideally, human brain can remember five plus minus two options very easily. So if we speak about, okay, let's go out for a meal, for lunch, right? So if I suggest 10 restaurants to you, you're going to be like, okay, you can eat on your own. I'm going to Uber Eats a McDonald's and I'm going to go ahead with life, right? So how is it that while e-commerce apps and quick commerce apps are all about abundance and having large number of SKUs and a large inventory to make better choices, they also have things like Amazon's choice, bestseller, most voted, highest read, best selling book. These kind of tags and these kind of labels kind of, you know what they help the users to do is they help the users to narrow down their search. While they're looking at all the abundance that's available within a product, they're also being subtly directed with these visual cues to make an emotional decision at the right time, at the right seducible moment.
Awesome. So before we move on, right, we're inching very close to the 1 hour mark. And it's a humble request to everyone. If you can stay back, by all means, do stay back. We have a lot of points and a lot of topics to cover. But if somebody has any commitments and wishes to move on, by all means, do not worry. We will share the recording of this webinar with you later on. But before we move on, we're all humans, right? We all love rewards. We all love platforms that give out rewards. Which brings me to a very interesting question. Which sort of a reward framework would actually make you stick around for longer? Think of the first brand that comes to your mind when you talk about rewards and scratch cards, right? What is the strategy that they use that makes you use their platform over and over again? Sagar, can we have the questions? So the question is very simple. Which of these reward mechanisms is more likely to increase stickiness? One, immediate predictable rewards for every action. Every time you do something, you get a reward. Second, making rewards difficult to access to increase their perceived value. I'll make you fight for it. And then eventually you'll cry, and then I'll give you a very small discount coupon, right? Rewarding users after they complete an extensive series of tasks. I'm going to make you go through a treasure hunt just to give you a cookie at the end. Or having variable rewards to create that anticipation and motivation. I know I'm getting a reward, but I don't know how much. Which of these do you think is more likely to get a user to stick to your app? All right. And with that, Sagar, can you please flash the results? Interestingly, we have like a equal balance between option 1 and option 4. Now, option 4, if you look at Google Pay, right, you know you're going to get a scratch card after every transaction, but somehow you don't know how much. And then when you don't get anything for a really long time, you actually cherish those 2 rupees that you get at the end of it, right?
Yes, yes.
And there are certain people who believe that, okay, let me know what I'm going to get and give it to me every time. You're going to give me 20% off on my next transaction. I'm okay with it. Just give it. Okay. Ideally, I would fall on the latter side of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, Arushi, over to you. You're the expert on this.
Thank you, Chirag. Right. So, very rightly said, variable rewards. If on every Google Pay transaction you got a reward, you would not value it, right? The whole mystery, am I going to get something? If you see these things, casinos have spin the wheels, they have slot machines, right? They're actually wired on the, system that variable reward is what keeps users coming back. It is what makes systems and products addictive. So if you see on the left, right, gamification. Now, rewarding users for every action that they take on the platform, giving them a leaderboard, giving them badges, so that they can, not just visually be happy with the product that they are using, but feel like they have created something of their own. That is what makes products stick. And Duolingo is case in point. Like they are doing it beautifully in today's world. Right. So, for example, Instagram, right? So before Instagram made it public, sorry, just a disclaimer to buy the blue tick, it was a matter of pride. People valued the blue tick that they're verified users. They're like, it's like a celebrity equivalent, right? Of having that blue tick. That is before Instagram started selling it for money. And Chirag, please share your thoughts on it too.
Oh, dude, I tried every possible hack in the universe just to get a free blue tick. I actually wrote emails on behalf of celebrities to the Twitter team, to the Instagram team, just somehow figuring out a free blue tick. And that's me when I was in college, right? I wanted to be a celebrity back then and flaunt my blue tick. But yeah.
Back then,
Yeah, back then. Now I have the money to actually buy a blue tick.
now you are a celebrity. Okay. So
Yes.
next point, power of autonomy, right? So human beings like to think that they're in control of their actions, of their behaviors, right? So systems that kind of allow users to customize their experience, how they get notifications, how they can skip ads, basically control the digital real estate. That is what gives the users the intention and the kind of priming that they are in control of what they're doing on a product. We can see that in also in how, Apple tracks your data, Apple tracking transparency. Or if you look at Facebook, Meta, for example, it asks you when you enter a platform, are you allowing it to track your data? And obviously, there's compliance and there's GDPR and all those things. But it is a layer of trust markers that gives the users the perception that they can trust this platform because it's not doing things or making the users do things that they don't want to. Right. So then comes the power of celebrity, right? So the social proof. Human beings are going to believe something if other people are recommending it. So if your friend recommends a restaurant, you're more likely to go and eat there. If your friend recommends a product, you're more likely to use it. There are different kinds of social proof. There's celebrity, there are experts, there are influencers, and also wisdom of the crowd. So for example, you know, different kinds of platforms. So, you know, nudges, right? So LinkedIn, for example, it subtly tells you who else to follow in the network, right? It tells you people who are similar to you. It recommends people who are different than you but have something in common with you. And Gmail, for example, right? So Gmail nudges users to reply to mails. It sends you reminders. If a user has to do all the thinking on a platform, your experience and product have failed. The whole point of it is to minimize the learning curve for the user so that it becomes more intuitive. Now, how is it that you build this circle of influence? There are different types of influencers in a person's life, but something that works magically and has the highest rate of creating influence in a human being's mind are technical experts, are academic experts, and a person like yourself, right? So, how many times have we seen this on different products? Like people like you are investing $100 every month. Now, financial apps are not legally allowed to use that kind of data where they're showing one user data for the other. But the way they frame this entire system is to build your circle of influence, is to create that FOMO, that, hey, if people like me are investing $100, why am I staying back? Am I not going to end up making the same kind of savings as them 10 years down the line? Right?
Awesome. So a lot of UX. We should do this, we should do that. Great stuff. At the end of it, how do you actually quantify it? Okay. How do you quantify all the efforts that you put in? Are you going in the right direction? Are you running in the right direction? How do you measure all of that? Sagar, can you pull up the question? Which UX metric is best for measuring how difficult or easy it is for your users to complete a task? Number one, Net Promoter Score. Number two, customer effort score. Number three, customer satisfaction score. Or number four, task completion rate. Which of these is the correct answer? Now, I just want to check if you're awake, which is why this question is tricky. Don't go by the absolutes. Don't do an apple to apple comparison between the question and the answer. I'll give you 3 more seconds. Sagar, can you pull up the results, please? Surprisingly, the correct answer is customer effort score. NPS is how likely somebody is to recommend your business to somebody. So obviously that's not related to UX. Customer satisfaction score is more to do with service delivery, more to do with product delivery, more to do with the overall experience. How satisfied are you with the technician that you spoke to? Again, nothing to do with UX. Task completion rate, the entire premise of defining a task and how do you measure it, how do you measure the completion of it is very difficult. If you equate a task to an event on your website, 30% scroll is also an event. Is that the objective of a great UX design? No. Customer effort score is actually a qualitative measure of asking people this question. How easy did you find adding something to a cart or completing checkout? How easy was the checkout process? They would give you a rating between 1 to 5, 5 being the highest and the easiest, right? So the higher your score, the more easier it is. So customer effort score is something that you should probably look at implementing on your respective platforms, asking people this question along with your NPS and your CSAT questions. All right, over to you, Anush.
Thank you. Right. So there's something called oxytocin, right? So that's the hormone that kind of makes a user trust a product or trust an interface, right? So it starts from no trickery, I'm in a safe environment, everything's done with my consent, everything is easy to use, it's intuitive, and I don't have to read too much, do too much, think too much. People are tired of all the digital, bombarding that happens across different apps. Now, having said that, people are not comparing a digital experience in an apple to apple. They're not comparing a banking app to another banking app. They're comparing a banking app to a Netflix or to a Google Pay or to an Apple Pay for that matter, right? Expectation is very high. Now, while the expectation is high, a product not only needs to solve the problems for the user, but also needs to get their trust so that they can keep coming back. If something is too hard, it'll become frustrating. If it's too easy, it'll become boring. A product ideally should create a flow state for a user. And this state, it's a combination of what the user's expertise is, what their skill level is, are they tech savvy or not, versus what is the level of challenge that the product brings about to use it. Now, also another example is Instagram, right? So it started telling you, why are you seeing this post? Is it nudity? Is it, content that is graphic? It started blocking those things. Now, that is kind of helping the users achieve the flow state so that they can bypass pieces of content that don't really relate to them or not something that they're looking forward to seeing on their feed.
Arushi, interestingly, in the previous slide, right? When
Mhm.
you showed that graph, that if it is too easy, it's going to be boring. If it is too hard, it's going to be frustrating. The app that immediately clicks my head is
Mhm.
Candy Crush. The amount of hours I have spent behind completing challenges, it's
Absolutely.
not too easy and it's not too hard. It's just the right balance of killing 4 hours on a flight without internet, just playing Candy Crush.
Mhm.
Super example. And there are a bunch of other games also. If you've played Ludo King, for example, right? It does the same thing. If you play against a computer, it's the same thing.
Mhm.
It's hard enough.
Mario, Super Mario, it's
It's hard
easier in
enough
some
to
parts.
challenge you.
Yeah,
It's hard enough to challenge you, but not too easy enough for you to complete.
absolutely. We've all grown up playing Super Mario, right? Contra, Super Mario, and the likes of it. Right?
I feel old now.
All right. So, what is it that makes people continue performing certain actions on a product? It's choice confirmation bias, which means that while these decisions are emotional in nature, that kind of drives action to use a product, a human being will typically rationalize their emotional decisions. They will tell themselves 50, 100 reasons of why they made the right decision. Now, there's a flip side to the coin. There's something called the Zeigarnik effect. It's like Chirag not finding my bread that I offer him for dinner good enough, right? So there are certain design patterns that you see. So, for example, human beings are more likely to continue making progress if the product can help them visualize that progress, whether it's completing your LinkedIn profile, whether it's giving progress bars as to this is what you've done and this is the way that you have to go, right? So it creates this tension, this kind of, you know, motivation that people want to continue doing what they initially signed up for. Now, having said that, not everybody is going to continue and climb Mount Everest with a product, but there are these subtle visual cues that we can incorporate in the design that is going to help them complete their task and make sure the product becomes sticky enough for the users to come back to. Completion bias, right? So, progress bar, they encourage you to take up challenges, right? So, leaderboards, for example, right? So when you pitch yourself against people who are doing the same amount of action or, doing the same things in the journey, it's going to influence you to win over them, right? Everybody is a winner at heart. Nobody likes to lose, right? So how is it that products can kind of capitalize on the way humans are psychologically wired to create designs that help them get their goals? That is the premise of this entire discussion, right? And coming to our last point, right? So a user is going to perceive a design to be more useful if it's very aesthetic. Imagine the Microsoft of computing versus the Apple of computing. There's a reason why Apple is more avant-garde or more cutting edge, right? Why? Because they are hyper focused on every single part of their experience speaking the same language. And that again brings us back to the point that your experience is not just digital. It starts from the point at which the touch point where the user discovered your product, brand, or service, moving on to the digital experience before, during, after, and also repeat purchase. Are they customers who are coming back? And when they are coming back, what is it that you are providing as a product to balance the familiarity with some novelty, rewarding them, but not rewarding them fully, rewarding them just enough so that they keep coming back. And yeah, this brings us to the end of all the, yarn I had to share and the things that I know. And over to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Arushi. And for everybody who's still stuck around, I just want to take 5 more minutes of your time before we wrap up this session. I want to introduce you to this really amazing uh, wing that we've created at Hurix called Hurix Craft Studios, where we talk about and we sort of eat our own dog food, right? We eat, sleep, breathe user experience. If you can just quickly go on to the next slide, Anush. We believe that no amount of gyan is going to change the world. It's the people who actually roll up their sleeves who can actually change the future. You don't need to be a Me Too brand anymore. You can be the first Air India or the first TransUnion Civil or the first Michigan University or the first brand that you represent, right? You could be the first in that industry. You don't need to be a Me Too brand. And to do all of that, we come together with a lot of things. We put a lot of pieces of the puzzle together. We've got people from all walks of life, right? From psychology to design to marketing to product to tech to business. Everybody is a part of the Super 8 team that we built at Hurix Digital. And we sort of bridge this divide between should it be user focused or should it be business focused? Why can't it be both? We'll help you bridge that divide between the two. And with that one-stop shop of everything related to building an A-class product that you would possibly need. Now that includes reviewing your existing UX, doing a lot of user research, build, designing strategies of how to do it, and actually building that for you. If your life can change with the entire design of the page changing, we'll give you stats and data that what we're saying is true, and we'll also implement that for you. We'll do experiments for you. We'll run those A/B tests for you till you see success. For us, it's not about getting logos in our portfolio. We're working with the who's who of the world, right? For us, it's about being the first in the industry, making you the first in the industry, and making this partnership the first in the industry. So with that said, if any of you are interested in exploring what we can do with Hurix Digital Studios, Hurix Craft Studios, feel free to talk to us. Do reach out to our sales team, our marketing team. Do reach out to me or Arushi on LinkedIn. We'll be more than happy to connect you with the right people. And we tried something new today. I know we overshot by a little bit, but if you liked this experiment, if you liked this masterclass, if you liked this webinar, we'd love to know your experience. We'd love to know your feedback. Just like our UX, we also survive on user feedback. So by all means, go ahead, scan this QR code, fill in the feedback form, be as honest as you can, and we'll try to make it more better and more wholesome the next time. With that said, thank you so much, everybody, for taking your time and giving us your precious an hour and a half of your day. I know it's
We are
a long day.
very honored that you spend so much time with us, spreading the joy of UX, also learning about how is it that psychology plays into UX. It's not about colors. It's about how people think and relate to the world.
Do follow Hurix. Do stay in touch with all things Hurix. We have a lot of these interesting nuggets coming up for you, lined up for you in the coming months. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to stay back for some more time. If you have any questions or any suggestions, if you want to drop them in the Q&A or the chat. If not, thank you so much. Adios.
Wow, we have had such an active chat.
Bhumika has a question. Go on, Bhumika. Thank you so much, Ankit, for your kind words.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Ankit.
much. Thank you so much, Hemal. Thank you so much, Prince, Ayushi.
Thank you, Hemal.
Thank you, Nazia. Thank you so much.
See you soon, and we'd love to hear the next round of topic that you'd want for the next session.
Yeah, Shivam, we'll share the presentation, we'll share the recording, and we'll share a couple of more resources with you right after this webinar. Look forward. Oh, thank you so much, Meghna. Really liked it. Thank you so much for your feedback.
Wow, thank you, Meghna. That's really kind of you. Appreciate it.
Chirag, I will unmute Bhumika. I think she has a question.
Sure.
Yeah, Bhumika, please go on.
Go on, Bhumika.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Chirag. Hi, Ayushi. Thank you for the wonderful session. Actually, I was having a similar discussion with the product manager today itself regarding a UX design.
Mm-hmm.
So, to give you some context, so I work in Work India. It's
Mm-hmm.
a job platform like Naukri, but for blue collar people and gray collar people. So, telecalling, sales, back office, plumber, electrician, such maid, house help, these kinds of jobs we are into.
Mm-hmm.
So, to give you a visual representation, suppose we are like a Naukri platform and we
Mm-hmm.
have jobs, and you can just scroll down and just uh, see whatever jobs you like, and you can apply to them or call the HR directly. So we
Mm-hmm.
were discussing to create a quick apply section in which will show a pop-up to a user in which there would be a Tinder like swipe thing for applying onto
Interesting.
jobs.
Interesting.
And we'll just show 5 jobs, and we are also planning to build a recommendation engine in future, so that interaction to the 5 jobs by the user will also help us in building what to show to the user and what not. So now the discussion was happening ke on jobs पे what 2 buttons we should show. So the 2 buttons I was suggesting is like and dislike. The product manager was suggesting कि we should give apply now and not now buttons. So my point of view was कि if a user clicks on like, I'm sure he likes the job or she likes the job. And if he presses dislike, then he doesn't like the job. And we would be for sure having a clear cut answer कि if a user likes a job or dislikes a job. But if I go with the options that my product manager was suggesting, which is apply now and not now, in that if a user presses apply now, that is all good part. But if a user presses not now, I don't know if the user didn't like the job, or if the user did not wanted to apply, or if the user wanted some more details about the job, like a detailed page, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why he pressed not now button. So
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I cannot feed in that data directly to the recommendation engine because I don't know why the user pressed not now.
Sure.
So this
Here's
was,
here's the marketer and me speaking. Okay.
yeah,
What is the objective of your platform? If I'm as a user, okay, if I'm looking for a blue collar job, I'm on your platform.
yeah,
The objective of the platform is to get people to apply for a job.
yes,
And that is also going to be the basis on which your recommendation engine that you're trying to build in the future is going to work on. Your
huh,
recommendations will work on the kind of jobs I apply for. If I hit like and dislike, okay, I like it, I don't like it. But what after that? What happens to those 5 jobs that you've shown to them? Is there
so
another way where they can go back and then apply to it again? Maybe it's like saving a job and not saving a job.
that is a
That's
user
the key thing.
functionality. That is a user functionality we were thinking of. Okay, if we give like and dislike option at the end of the journey, we can give them all 5 jobs that they liked and give an option apply to all, or
Mm-hmm.
apply option after they have put in like button. Okay, now apply as well.
Isn't that
So
like too many clicks? Isn't I mean I
Clicks
like
is
again
not
and
always the metric, you know. A/B tested, Bhumika. That's what will tell you what works better. And also look at the mental model. Somebody who's blue collared, they're
hmm,
probably not dating online. So they don't understand the quickness of making a choice and making a commitment. When it comes to a job, people think about, oh, I'm going to spend 40 hours minimum of my life on this job. It is a high commitment decision. Excuse me. The swipe enough to tell you whether you want to make that commitment or not. Think about that fundamental question. The buttons are still secondary.
see that's the difference between a marketer and a UX expert. Okay. As a marketer, I'm looking at conversions. As a UX expert, she's looking at the user.
We're looking at both. We are
Uh,
looking at the
she,
same thing, just
she's
towards
gone
the
through the
swipe.
details and thought about, okay, what does this person usually do? She's
Mm.
actually researching the entire ICP. So again, right, like Arushi mentioned, do A/B tests. maybe, there's 1% chance that the marketer in me is right, which I'm fairly sure confident is not. But do A/B tests. Run it for 5% of your audience, and whichever is the winning variation, run it for the remaining 90%.
What if we don't have the tech bandwidth to run an A/B test on this? And product
Um,
has to take a call. So I will tell you what product manager wanted. Why product manager said ki apply now and not now, because their metric is ki apply button, user will click, and they have to drive conversion, as you said.
Mhm.
I also understand that, but I was thinking ki it's easier for us to understand. It's
Who's
easier.
that in
it's okay, Bhumika, I understand. So,
Huh.
uh, the best way to do it is, if you don't have the tech bandwidth to do it, run an experiment, maybe that pop-up, that modal, whatever you're trying to run it for 24 hours on a Monday or whichever is your high traffic day. The next week, run the second test, run that particular modal or pop-up on the same day for another 24 hours. See which version is giving you better conversions. You don't need a sophisticated tech platform to run A/B tests. You can do the number crunching on Excel as well. Just see what is performing better and then deploy it for the rest of the days.
So, Bhumika, also, if there's no tech bandwidth, please reach out to Hurix. We'll help you get that bandwidth.
Or that. So
Yes. Thank you so
from
much.
tech to right from tech to collecting all of this data to designing that Tinder swipe element that you want on your app, we'll be able to help you with all of that. Having said that, thank you so much everybody else for joining us. I hope you had an engaging and an interesting session. I will see you guys again in the coming month with another exciting topic, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye bye.
See you again soon. Bye bye.